Hi, everyone. Alana Hughes here. I'm going to introduce the first session, Project Lessons Learned from COVID. It'll be hosted by Philip Richardson. Philip is a world-renowned developer with a specialty in mixed-use developments, including theme parks, and revitalizing shopping centers with projects ranging up to $10 billion. Before I hand this over to Philip to start, we're going to start with a brief video.
We're committed to doing this on a 24/7, 365 schedule. So what that means is that there isn't a moment when there isn't something progressive being done on this site.
The different parts of the Ferrari world are the two big roller coasters. These are very fast.
Ferrari World is an exciting project. The actual physical structure is, of course, exciting. It's 2.2 million square feet, approximately 200,000 square meters in size, which makes it the world's largest indoor theme park.
Sorry for the technical difficulty there, everyone. Glad we got the video working. I'm going to hand this over now to Philip. Philip, you're muted.
Thanks kindly. I apologize. Thanks for that. I appreciate the opportunity to present a bit of a vision of some of the work that we regularly conduct internationally. I was really quite blessed to be able to lead that particular project, which was 12 billion US dollars and comprised of Ferrari World theme park, the 2019 winner of Best Theme Park in the World, Warner Brothers theme park, which we've just been added, and a 3.5 million square foot super regional mall, all integrated. So the reason I bring it forward is also to talk about the kind of lessons learned that I've had internationally. And believe me, you know, we need to pay attention internationally more and more to the experiences of our colleagues elsewhere. This was a good example. So back to what we're here to talk about today, which is the lessons learned from the pandemic. I want to say that I thought about it once Kevin very kindly invited me to participate, and I tried to settle on a word that would kind of sum it up for we project managers and project directors. And I kept coming back to one that I think will resonate with you: catastrophic. I'm pretty sure that that finds agreement with many of you. And the reason I say that is, of course, it was so terribly disrupting to all of our normal processes. And we had to learn on the go just to attempt to keep pace. I'd like to, you know, of course, get the insights of my fellow panelists on this. But just to sum up, you know, just a few of the particular experiences we had to cope with started with no in-person meetings, a disconnect from our colleagues and from our clients. Yes, we made it up as we're doing right now, but this is a learned experience. When we first started out, not many of us understood how to use this connectivity. The supply chain fails that we've experienced along the way. I mean, how frustrating can it be? Simple things, very elementary, like site access or no site access. And obviously this percolates down to the delivery dates that we had originally promised to our clients and that we eventually had to live with through all of these frustrations. So, you know, frankly, that list can go on, and so can this conversation. So I'd like to quickly move over to my fellow panelists. Kevin has been introduced, but John Kifta, you are someone who has been very happily volunteered to be a panelist as well. And you have a lot of international experience. You also have experience within the roofing industry. And, we'd like to hear your perspective on that in a moment as well. But I'd like to begin with Kevin. Kevin, would you like to address the part of the conversation that you'd like to involve right now?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Everything good?
I can.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I found COVID was and wasn't a surprise in a way. We, every 10 years or so, we've had some kind of, there has been some kind of pandemic, the avian flu, the swine flu, we had SARS. We kept having these cycles of disruption due to these health scares. None of them were ever anywhere near as big as COVID, but it's kind of like the warnings were there. So actually, my organization, ProCep, the training company, we had actually a pandemic response plan. We'd already had this plan put out in case SARS or something ever resurfaces. We've got a strategy to deal with it. And it was quite funny because in the late summer of 2019, we dusted it off and updated it, not expecting that COVID would show its head, just a few months later. So we were actually probably better off than many other companies in our space, in the management consulting and training business. As of January of 2020, we were already doing a whole bunch of online training. Like I think we had 40 courses scheduled already at the start of the year. So when COVID happens and there's all these shutdowns and everybody started canceling all these courses because they don't want people coming into a classroom and an instructor and, everything was shutting down. A lot of training companies couldn't pivot and couldn't deliver online training effectively, didn't know how to do it, et cetera. We were already there. We just had to do more of it. I think the biggest challenge was convincing people that have never tried online meetings, online facilitation, online, training to convince them to try it out, because a lot of people were convinced that technology wouldn't work, couldn't support them. They'd never done it before. But I think a lot of people were surprised that, they could work from home. They could have effective meetings. They could take classes and learn. So I've been working from home since the 90s, off and on, most of my time since the 90s. So for me, this was not a big difference, these COVID shutdowns, but it was to a lot of people, and a lot of people really had a difficult time adapting. So I really understand that. But for me, the issue wasn't on our side. My work, my team's capabilities really weren't affected. It was the effect on our clients, who were all scared and stopped spending and locked the doors and shut down because they weren't sure what to expect. So I think my biggest lesson learned is no matter how well we are prepared for COVID, we rely on clients or customers who may not be. So we have disaster response plans. We are ready for things that could go wrong. I was a Boy Scout, right? Be prepared. That was my motto. We were ready for stuff, but our clients weren't, and that still hurt us significantly. I mean, our business cut in half for that 2 years of COVID, 2.5 years. And that's a significant hit, right? Yes, we had to make adjustments, but it wasn't all unexpected. We knew some of the things we could do to make this work, but our clients weren't, and that was what really impacted us more. And I think I've heard that from other people in other industries too. Even if organizations were prepared, their supply chain partners or their customers or somebody else in that web of value was not ready, and that brought the whole chain, impacted the whole chain.
Thanks for that, Kevin. Sir John, would you like to add to that? You're suffering from the same problem I did. You're on mute. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, can do.
Okay. So I was involved prior to the pandemic with 2 industries. I'll touch on each one. First of all, I was acting as the national sales manager for a metal roofing company. They are a manufacturer and also an installer of metal roofs. So there's two aspects to that business. So I think the first thing people have to understand is metal roofing is a very growing industry. It's growing at an expedited rate of 15 to 20% a year based on environmental concerns. Metal roofs last literally a lifetime, 50 years plus. So a lot of people are opting for them, whereas opposed to regular roofs, you might get 10 years out of them. So we had a lot of momentum going in our industry. Consequently, we were also doing a lot in regards of trying to work with the government in regards to government grants for environmental reasons. There's been government grants on, for example, insulation, solar, windows, but never on metal roofs because they essentially save you a lot in energy costs. So it's something that should really be considered, that was really considered amongst our clientele as well. So we lost that momentum. So the first thing that happened in our industry was the construction shutdown. Okay, there was no more construction. So we had installers, roofs ready to go, nothing could be done. Consequently, it dragged on. And then basically, our sales team shut down. We had to lay off people because basically a lot of our sales are predicated upon in-house demonstrations because we're dealing with a $20,000, $25,000 roof and you just can't sell those over the phone. So that all stopped. Then the next thing that happened was the supply chain shortage. No steel. Canadian mills shut down. The only thing that was happening was there was some offshore steel available. And our whole industry, our company was based on something being Canadian made, Canadian owned. So we were dealing with that. And then prices doubled literally in the steel industry because it was construction material, just like lumber did. And orders we had deposits on were at set prices. So that really messed things up as well. Plus we couldn't fulfill those orders. Layoffs at the plant. No steel, no work, people were laid off. A lot of our installers were contracted installers. So that's the next thing that went. These guys had no work, so they moved on. So we've lost our installers. Our salespeople were commissioned salespeople, so they were out of work. They moved on. So again, a lot of our installations were ultimately canceled because it just dragged on too long. Our repair and maintenance was affected, so there were a lot of unhappy customers. The company more or less went into hibernation, and to some extent they are still in hibernation because there's no workers. Skilled installers are very hard to come by, as we all know. Trying to get someone to work in a skilled trade is very difficult. Prices are still high, still supply issues. There's a big aftermath in terms of what's happened afterwards. The company lost a lot of momentum. Right now, people that were interested in perhaps moving up to a metal roof, prices have gone up drastically. And there's issues in terms of just their own financial issues in terms of being able to afford one now. At one point, we were financing these roofs at low interest rates. Now interest rates have doubled. So that is basically an issue as well. So the whole industry in terms of our company was literally devastated. And it still is. I mean, it's ongoing and it will be for a while as supply chains catch up. So, I'll be happy to answer questions on that afterwards, but that's just one aspect of what I was doing. Another thing I was involved in, I'll just touch on, I'm on the board of directors of a charity. And basically the charity gives 20 awards to 20 different ladies every year for different achievements. Recipients include Mayor Hazel McCallion, Jean Augustine, who is also, I understand, a recipient of the Order of Canada. So every year we have a gala. The last one was in 2019, and it's basically a fundraiser. We had 800 people, close to 800 people at that last gala. There are politicians, sports figures, that sort of a thing, and it's a fundraiser. And what happens with the money we raise, we give to aspiring young ladies for a post-secondary school education, their scholarships. So basically that all dried up. So a lot of these people, these young ladies never received their scholarships. We had a program where they were selling these albums to raise money for themselves as a fundraiser. That dried up because it was all, relatives, that sort of a thing they were selling them to, friends. So there's a great aftermath after that. So we're just getting back on our feet with that. But those are just two of the things we were involved in terms of what I was doing. So a lot of fallout, which we'll be feeling for a long time in both the industries.
Thanks, Sir John. I'm sure that your discussion is going to promote a lot of questions that'll follow here shortly.
Okay, well,
If you'll be just patiently wait a moment, I'd like to cover some of my personal observations regarding the way forward. But before I do, Kevin, do you have anything you'd like to add right now before the Q&A?
I just wanted to something Sir John said really triggered my thinking as well, because I do a little bit of work with some nonprofit organizations, which is how much COVID was essentially an existential threat to the nonprofit sector, because a lot of it is based on events and fundraising and events like the event we're having today, but with a ticket price. And with everybody experiencing work shutdowns and the fear of the economic impacts of this, nobody could have seen how widespread this became. This was almost a zombie apocalypse to scale event. And it impacted all parts of the country and all industries, as Sir John pointed out. His business, the metal roofing business, just stopped completely, and the company's still hibernating, even though the rest of us were talking about, we're starting to recover. That sounds like that business has no chance of recovering yet. And the charities were completely stopped as well, because all their fundraising events all just collapsed, and many of their charitable activities couldn't happen in those events. So I guess I can see how some sectors of the economy were hurt much greater than others. What I'd like to hear from Sir John is, what would you have, knowing what happened, what could you have done better to prepare for this? Thinking about how this impacts our projects. If I was a builder planning, to put metal roofs on some buildings or something, what could we have done to better protect our project from the impacts of these COVID issues and shortages? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think a lot of the problem dealt with the fact that it dragged on so long. People thought this was going to be a lockdown for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and the whole thing dragged on. And it was just the fact that there were so many questions that were unanswered. A contingency plan would have been, if we knew this was going to happen, we could have probably stocked up on more material, so we'd have product at least to sell. There's still an issue with product. So I think that would be one of the main points I would contend.
What do you think you could have done about the labor shortages if you knew this was coming? Is there any strategies so we don't lose our workers?
Nothing from the point of view that we'd be able to provide them with work. They were independent contractors, so a lot of them moved on. They were carpenters, they did other things. And I guess however they replenished their cash flow, I really don't know. But a lot of them, I guess, were dependent upon the government grants and CERB and various things that were happening. So thank goodness for that. But again, to find skilled workers now is very difficult. As we all know, there's a labor shortage, especially amongst the trades.
Your charity work, have you tried to do some online events or things that would be fundraisers that sort of worked around some of the restrictions?
Well, the fundraising is basically based on the gala we have every year. So that wasn't happening. But there's a chain reaction with that too, because we go to these large convention centers and they're basically, they accommodate us, and they were all shut down as well because of this whole thing. It's a chain reaction. So there's not much else we could have done, in my eyes, at this point. You keep the thing alive, you talk to people, you keep the communications going via website and whatnot, so people are aware of it, but our hands were completely tied in terms of getting together.
I'd like to add something as well to your question, Kevin. Um, Firstly, I'm rather blessed to be the vice chair of Habitat for Humanity affiliate for Halton, Mississauga. It's the fifth biggest affiliate in Canada. And what we've done is summed up in one word, I would say, and that's resiliency. We had built in a very strong executive team within our system. And again, because of the shall we say, the business we're in, we were able to operate a restore. And that restore contributed very significant new profits for us during the pandemic. Consequently, our programs, such as the tiny homes program and so on, we've been actually rolling those out. We've been working through it with volunteer labor and so on. Now, of course, not Habitat was equally affected by as others were about supply chain issues and so on, but we put our heads down and really forged ahead, looking for new forms of revenue, and we found them. We had a record year last year.
Interesting. So there is hope.
Yeah, there's different solutions to different propositions, and it's driven by the assets in hand. I mean, if we didn't have a restore, I'd be telling you a different story. But we have also secured ongoing donations and so on, and that's on account of the strength of the brand. Habitat for Humanity is so well known across North America and amongst nonprofits. So we do have those benefits that have arisen over decades of building. But still in all, yes, I would take away the optimism, Kevin, and that is through baking in resiliency into your organization. It leads to solutions. That's a good one. So, do you have anything further to add, Kevin? Because
I was just curious about your background outside of Habitat for Humanities. You've got this lovely picture in the background of Ferrari World that you built overseas. As a large scale mega project developer, what did you learn during COVID that could be applied in my industry or in other industries on projects?
Sure. Well, there's two answers to that question in order. Firstly, as it affects our industry, I've overseen and led the development of projects large and small. Surprisingly, you find that project in Abu Dhabi, which in total was 6 million square feet, was in the shadow of the one I did next, which was in Kunming, China, which is 19 million square feet, for which I did the master planning. But it doesn't matter the scale of those projects. The professionalism with which you approach the situation, combined with the fact that these skills are able to be migrated down to the smallest project and all the way back up to the largest. So, in our recent book, Vertical Villages, The Magic of Mixed Use Developments that we published, Danielle Papillon-Richardson and myself are co-authors of it. We basically outline the current day trends and so on included in resisting or overcoming the pandemic's effects in the development business. And so I'm sure that when you step outside, that sort of realm and into the more general business realm, there are some key takeaways. Resiliency is at the top of my list. Next would come the methodology that's available to us today. And the four keys to success that I would attribute are: number one, good communication. So as an example, in the case of Abu Dhabi, which again, transferable elsewhere, I had a team of 450 architects and engineers reporting to me, and no one was permitted to have a private office, including myself. I sat out in the middle, and it promoted, continual conversation. It was kind of taxing on me because it led to long hours, but I invited it. And secondly, I wouldn't let anybody call me by other than my first name. Again, to further break down the communication barriers. With 14 different cultures, I got the benefit of phenomenal ideas I would personally never have thought of, and it contributed to our success. So communication is obviously essential and fundamental to what we have to do. Secondly, technology enablement. As long ago as when I was doing that development, we used a well-known, project management software system called Primavera P6, but we used it in a very aggressive and special way, such that in the morning, I would come to my desktop and have a look at the latest depiction of my schedule and my budget to midnight the night before. Every day it was refreshed. Commodities were placed, hours were tallied, and so on. And it resulted in our being able to very finely control how we manage the whole system. We then went out to the site, saw the hot spots, came back to the office and corrected them. So basically, it's that the advantage that we have today of the use of technology and all the apps that are available to us today. I'm on the board of directors for a company, a prop tech company in Boston called eProperty Care. And they specialize in providing cell-based management systems for small to medium-sized apartment owners. But that's just one example of hundreds and hundreds of helpmates, shall we say, that assist us in doing our job better, but it also gathers significant intelligence for us too. Then, the management of a hybrid project management. I mean, we learn what it is to not have access to a site, and we're still expected to deliver. Well, the workarounds that we evolved as a consequence of that have led to some very valuable lessons learned for us in the form of the how to work in a hybrid fashion effectively. And so we can't forget that. We need to take that as a step forward and continue to enrich our operations with both in-person and hybrid connectivity. And lastly, visibility. Insofar as visibility requirements, what I mean by that is that we break down communications barriers. We're visible, we're active, we're aggressive within a system, and we're all inclusive. It's a complete wraparound of your entire team, which may go so far as to include your supply chain providers and so on. So, that integration is available to us, but we have to aggressively pursue it. And all of these things I've just talked about in their own way can be applied within even the smallest scale of projects. So I tend to look optimistically towards the use of these and the fact that we're pulling ourselves up by our own bootstraps, shall we say.
Yeah, I really like, Phil, what you talked about, the I guess essentially a more granular or shorter cycle of feedback, improving the communications, getting your project data nightly updated, because faster feedback allows us to be more nimble and respond more quickly as well. And I found that was very helpful for my situation. We could turn on a dime if we had to, because we had that. We're not waiting for monthly reports or quarterly reports or weekly status meetings. I'm getting data on a live basis so I can respond quickly. So that was very helpful as well.
Yes, very. John, Sir John, do you have something you'd like to add?
Well, I think within the manufacturing industry, like the company I was doing work for, this is a company that was established. They were in business for over 50 years, yet they got caught in a supply chain shortage. So I think if a company is well capitalized, they should think about just stocking up as much as they can. So if something does happen in the supply chain, at least they've got material to work with. Because one little hiccup, not being able to get screws to put in a roof or something, one little thing like that can hold up the entire project. So I think capitalization and staying well, so it's almost like becoming a prepper within the manufacturing industry.
This all started in the mid 80s with all this lean manufacturing movement coming out of Japan. This idea of keeping zero inventory and integrating tightly with your supply chain so you can have fast throughput and very little capital requirements on it. I mean, it makes sense when times are good, but we saw it makes you vulnerable when times turn as well. So
exactly,
that's
it's
a good point.
Cash flow industry for sure, Kevin.
Thanks for that, Sir John. So I'd like to turn to questions and answer period. I'm sure that some folks would like to have a question answered.
We did have one question already. Somebody who wanted to speak, Leora.
Okay.
So Leora, if you'd like to unmute and share your question and comments.
Thanks for that.
Hi, I'm unmuting. I don't know if my camera is showing me. I stopped.
You're good.
I'm
Yep,
good.
we
You
see
can
you.
see me? I can't
Yep.
see me. So I do apologize. Kevin did ask me to speak on this panel a few months ago, and I was just like, gosh, I have no time because I'm just swamped with work. And so I'm just going to make a few comments that are a little bit in a different area that may impact other people and where they're coming from. I saw, well, first, what do? I'm an executive account director at Procept and Title Shift, and I sell corporate training and build relationships with clients. So what I think I saw happen in the pandemic really is impactful on the human resources side. First of all, the baby boomers, the gray wave, we say, they retired earlier. And I found that with that shift, there's a lack of documentation, and they've taken thousands of years of institutional memory are gone. And so that was always a problem, but it got expedited with COVID. And then what happened is you have the millennials, Gen Xers, and the Gen Z coming on board, and they're somewhat lost because they're coming into a company and they're not getting onboarded properly because the other people have left, and the people that are remaining just don't have the time to do onboarding correctly. And then the onboarding was no longer, let's get into a training room and do a day of proper onboarding. We're now going to do this virtually. And I've spoken to many different people in major corporations who had this come down the line from head office because head office wanted to save money on rental space. Oh, we're all virtual now. And they were like, sure. And then after, in the back of their head, they were thinking like, are you kidding me? You've now turned my onboarding situation into not a day and a half in a facility, but weeks and weeks and weeks of confusion because processes weren't put into place to onboard people properly virtually. So this whole shift is been huge. And then on top of that, I think that millennials and Gen Z are phenomenally creative. They were born with a mouse in their hand, if not more. They click and know their way around the internet. They were innately born with it because of when they've come into the world. And many people felt that when we went to virtual work, that people would not get the job done, spend more time with their kids or with their family, be bogged down. And the absolute reverse happened with the vast majority of people that I've interacted and spoken to in corporations. People were pulling 10 and 12 days. The line between work and home got very blurred, and people began to burn out and have a work-life balance issues. And so at Procept Title Shift, we got a lot more requests for work-life balance type of courses to help people through that situation. The commute back to work or to and from work, where you have downtime and you subconsciously solve creatively in your mind issues that have come up, was gone. And people just were having a lot of time balancing work and life. So that's become a huge issue, and digital fatigue, which has become a huge issue. And we've all started to begin to deal with that with this, I personally felt that, I've been working from home since 2015, and I was always on the phone, and I had Skype before it was MS Teams or Zoom. And I never went from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to have like 8 meetings in a day. And at the beginning, by the time I hit 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it started at 7:30 a.m., I had this expression, I have a fractured brain, because I can't even remember what I talked about at 8 a.m. So just something I started to do personally was build in artificial float. So I stopped booking my meetings back to back. And I just said, no, I need a half an hour or 15 to 20 minutes in to take notes, to think through, and, do a few less meetings, and I will be far more productive. And you can see this in the industry. Many corporations have Friday no Zoom days, right? Or many corporations say it's your weekend, you shouldn't be working. So I think corporate America, corporate Canada started to begin to clue in to the fact that more harm was being done to their people. So those pieces I just wanted to bring up with, intercommunication between the generations became far more critical. Work-life balance became far more critical. Constant movement, lack of documentation, which is, we have courses called Project Closeout Best Practices, which became critical. Kevin may elaborate more on that. And sorry, I took up all this time, but I just wanted to shift to that whole problem that began to happen because we were running on a treadmill and we made ourselves less productive than more productive. Thanks.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Post them on our common chat link if you want. With that, if I hear no other questions, then perhaps it's time, Kevin, to wrap up. Do you have any final thoughts, Sir John?
No, I think, everybody was affected differently for sure. And in retrospect, yeah, there was a lot of fallout. We never expected this thing to last so long. And if we had have known, people certainly would have planned differently and accordingly. But it is what it is. And what can I say? Everybody can start pointing fingers and whatnot. It's this should have been different, that should have been different, but putting the blame. But we have to move forward, I think, and just sort of regroup. And
I agree with you.
Reinvent ourselves. I think a lot of us have reinvented ourselves in terms of contacts. Over the course of 2 or 3 years, a lot of people have retired. A lot of people have moved on in different jobs and industries, and we're all sort of reestablishing ourselves. And I think, a lot more networking is going on now in terms of doing that. I'm sure LinkedIn is very busy. People are sort of catching up with people and whatnot. So things have changed, and I think we should just optimistically move forward accordingly.
Thanks for that, John. I agree with your conclusions, and I don't think we have another choice. But let's put the best face on it and continue on. And there are many, many advantages that are on the table, particularly the lessons that we've learned over this time period. So thank you very much for those thoughts.
Thank you.
Kevin, do you have a thought?
Yeah, just sort of my closing thought is this actually I mean, as devastating it's been to the economy and certain companies and industries and even individuals, there is a silver lining in here a little bit, in that this crisis has forced us to modernize. It's forced us to get more efficient. It's forced us to re-engineer and rethink, as John said, rethink our strategies on how we're going to get through this. But I think from a project management perspective, I now know, here we are in 2020, end of 2022, I know all my team members have certain technological capabilities now. They can all do desktop video conferencing, whether it's Zoom or Skype or Teams or whatever. They all have some basic capabilities. If I'm scheduling meetings with customers, I know for sure they're going to be able to use a Zoom link or a Teams link or something. They've done enough of it by now. They know the technology, their computer works, they've got good internet connections, they have headsets or capabilities to have these discussions. Whereas even 2-3 years ago, that wasn't a guarantee. It was hit and miss, but now we know everybody's at least got a certain base level. It's forced us to upgrade. And there is a good side to that as well.
Yeah, you're quite right. In my general industry, commercial real estate, what it did was accelerate some long wave trends, such as, for example, what to do with shopping centers. In 2017, Deutsche Bank studied the inventory of major malls in the US and concluded that between 25 and 50% of them would close by the year 2025 because of their ongoing challenges, online shopping, all of that. Well, quite obviously, the pandemic brought all of that, accelerated at a great pace and produced an opportunity for many people. Developers are by nature optimistic, and so we basically evaluated them, took up the opportunities that we saw out there to recycle, revitalize, optimize. And so that's what's been characterizing our industry of late. And even those poor folks, the residential condo developers who've overbuilt in the GTA, there's probably some salvation for them in the year's time too, we hope. But all that to say that, the resilience, I think, is the underscoring characteristic that is necessary on which to base all of what we've talked about. And the good news is a lot of folks have pitched up and have shown that they are resilient.
And if I being an agile project management expert, I can't let this go without at least mentioning agility here, because agility is all about responding to change. And what was the COVID crisis but a massive wave of change? It forced it down our throats, whether we wanted to or not. And it wasn't one change, it was thousands of little changes that kept hitting us constantly every day. And I think organizations that had built in that resilience, that organizational agility, the efficient processes, the attitudes that, don't fear the change, figure out how we can adapt to it efficiently, how we can even take advantage of it, dare I say, if that is an opportunity, were the ones that came out of this, if not whole, some of them came out even better than they were before. And I think that's a lesson we can all learn from this, is understanding some of these agility mindset and agility principles will help make us better prepared for future disruptions.
I agree. Thanks very much for that, Kevin. That was an important point. Well, with that, folks, thank you very much for attending our panel. We appreciate your being here. Sorry we didn't stimulate more questions from you. Maybe we answered more of them than we thought we were going to. But regardless of that, I'm sure there'll be opportunities for us to interact in the future, and we look forward to your input then. And thanks again, Sir John and Kevin. I appreciate your participation.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Thank you
Great.
very much.
Bye for now.
And just for everybody, we're now going to take a 15-minute break, and we're going to resume at 12:15 on this channel for our lunch networking activity with Morteza Zorabi. So now's a chance to go grab a bite to eat, take your quick bio break, grab something to eat, and come back for 12:15, and you'll get introduced to the lunch speaker and the lunch networking event. If you wish to not participate in the lunch event because you have to go do something for lunch, some people go pray or meditate or whatever, go to the gym. If you come back at 1 p.m. sharp, we will be resuming the educational content on two parallel